Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm your host, Eimear, and together here we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little. In the best possible way, of course, because life's too damn precious and too short to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It is time to choose ourselves for life so damn fabulous and soulfully fulfilling that we have to keep pinching ourselves to check if we're dreaming. Let's do this. Hi, I'm Eimear, and welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I want to talk to you and explain a little bit about why I started this podcast. Have you ever felt like you are in a waiting room in your life? I think for a long time, without even realizing it, I was in a waiting room. I was waiting for somebody else to tell me what to do, to show me the way, to choose me, to pick me, to pick me for the job, to pick me for the opportunity, to pick me as the girlfriend. In all these areas of my life, I think I didn't have a sort of hardwired programming in myself, this belief that I could choose, a really large life for myself, full of immense possibility. And I think I'd seen all these, I guess, quite cheesy little signs and dream big and you can do anything. And particularly as a young woman in the workforce back in my 20s, I'm 55 now. It's like women can have it all. And that just felt quite oppressive. I wasn't quite sure what all was, but it felt very difficult. And I have felt this gnawing sense as I got older that there had to be more for me than I had experienced so far. And I felt this real realization that I think, I've been waiting around. I've been waiting around for some permission slip to be granted by, I don't know, some omnipotent other, somebody who must be much more interesting, worthy, and powerful than just little old me, who was going to grant that to me. And in the absence of that, I would just continue to plod along in my kind of the all right life. But there just was this feeling that this sense that there was more. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about exploring that journey that we're all in of life and how we can find ourselves on a path in life that is not 100% of our own choosing. And that can be quite disconcerting. It can be quite disconcerting to kind of wake up in a career, in a relationship, in a situation and kind of go, how did I get here? How did I keep taking one step after the other? And whose plan was I following? I think often we put more attention and more time and more effort into maybe planning a vacation than we do into our lives. I know I didn't. I know a lot of things were kind of accidental for me. Career planning. I remember my sister was very clear on what she wanted to do. I'm one of seven. My elder sister um, knew very early on that pretty early on that she wanted to go into medicine. She wanted to be a doctor. And for a while I thought, oh, I'll be a doctor too. Like really just because she was being a doctor and that seemed like, okay, I need a plan, get a plan, I'll copy your plan. And then I realized I wasn't interested in being a doctor at all. And had a conversation with her once about careers, and career guidance at school was pretty not very sophisticated. And we had this chat about, I guess it was the beginning of visualizing who you would become And I made my decision based primarily on fashion and that I wanted to wear nice clothes and nice suits. And so that was it. I was going to be a businesswoman. And yeah, and I went into that area. I did an international marketing and languages course because I was also interested in languages. I like to travel. And that was it. I did a business course and did marketing. And I think I was haphazardly planning things. And that's okay for a while. That's okay for a while until it's not okay. And I think many people, myself included, find that this sort of haphazard, patched together pathway through life is not necessarily going to lead us to a very fulfilling conclusion. And I am going to admit here that I'm greedy. I'm greedy for a big, juicy life. My life is pretty great, but I am greedy for more, and I make no excuses for it apart from calling it greedy, which may seem like I am, that it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to want to express yourself fully in this life and to find out, geez, what might I be capable of? And I think that's a question that I like to ask myself a lot now. And that is not really a background that I come from, that culturally or in my immediate family, that it was like, you can do anything, you can be anything, and a hugely supportive background. It was a great upbringing in many ways. But yeah, I think we're very much constrained in what we can believe is possible for ourselves by the environment that we grow up in and what we see reflected there as what's possible or what's the right way to be. And that was to go to college, get a job, get a stable job, get married, have kids, and then it sort of peters out after that. And that's okay. That's enough. You should be happy with that. There was never the idea, like people who were setting up businesses, those were other people. People who were making like millions of dollars, those were other people. And they had to be somehow different from me. And I think that you have to consciously evolve and grow out of your conditioning. And Girl Choose Yourself is about that. It's about noticing where we have got a bit stuck and we've stopped choosing ourselves, or we never learned how to do it. We never learned how to get fully on our own side. And I think in a world that often didn't envisage women taking up an awful lot of space in it, it wasn't built by us or for us necessarily, but by those who didn't consider that we were going to take up an awful lot of space in it. And that just doesn't suit me one bit. Doesn't suit me one bit. It doesn't suit me for myself, and it definitely doesn't suit me for my daughter. And it sure as hell doesn't suit me for any granddaughters that I have. And it really starts with us daily, day in, day out, choosing ourselves really powerfully. And that means really getting to know ourselves in a way that I think it's sort of a deep remembering. I think we've forgotten who we are. Not to get too spiritual or anything, but I like this idea that we come into the world and we have a grand, maybe blueprint for a deeply fulfilling life. And we sort of forget it. We forget it. And life is about waking up to remembering. And so on my journey, I'm looking to remember the immensity of who I am and what I may be capable of. And through that, to be of deep service to other people who also want to wake up to the power that is simmering within them. And I think we all get an inkling of it. And it's almost scary. And I've found myself that it has felt easier to just go along with the environment of not kind of rocking the boat or not imagining things for myself being very different and hearing those sounds, I guess, from childhood and young adulthood of, who does she think she is? And all those voices that kind of keep you messaging that keeps you small. And it's sort of everywhere. Don't step outside the vision that I have of you. And so when you start doing that, like I don't think I've written two books now, The Little Book of Good Enough, and then the one that just came out that really inspired this podcast, Choose Yourself. I don't think I could have done that if I hadn't radically changed my environment and cultivated relationships with people who write books and who celebrate people, who take chances and begin to imagine a different version of themselves and take action to grow into that vision of themselves. I don't think I could have done that if I hadn't consciously cultivated an environment that where that's kind of normal. And I'm so grateful that I've done that. And the same thing with, running. I'm a runner. That sounds really interesting to say, actually. I'm just noticing how that feels in my body. Claiming that, like I'm a runner. I I've just run two marathons in 2024, like pretty much back to back, two major marathons. I ran Berlin in September and I ran the New York Marathon in, when does that happen? The very beginning of November. I was like, I was told when I was younger that I didn't have a lot of stamina, that I was, a sprinter. She can't do long distance. It's amazing how much that stuck in my head. And it took me physically training for my first marathon when I was turning 50 back in 2019. I remember the moment I was tired, really tired after maybe 2 miles, maybe less actually. So quite at the beginning of the training, and I stopped and I was just going, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm too tired. I'm just not somebody who can do endurance. And then it kind of hit me. It's like, oh, you run when you're tired. You run when you're tired. That's how you train. You don't stop when you're tired. You run when you're tired. And it sounds simple, really simple, right? But that was sort of like, oh, I have to meet myself tired running and be with that. And that's how I ran marathons. It's like, oh, this is tired. I can be with this. And, obviously not initially for all of the 26 whatever miles, but I was able to get a little bit longer in each run by going, oh, this is the part where it feels more tired. I pull back a little bit. I go for a little bit longer and my body gets stronger. And so I don't think I could have done that if I hadn't put myself in a position where I intended to grow, that I intended to break, almost like take that identity of somebody who didn't have strong stamina, and I decided I am going to show myself that that is not true. And it's obviously a very, very physical path when you're breaking that identity and burning it down. And I love to run because I believe that when you do that, because you go through such physical and mental challenge when you run distance, it makes you challenge every other area, every other limiting identity and label that you've put on yourself, because you literally demonstrate that it's not true. It's this tangible thing. Oh, I didn't think I could run around the block. I just did. Huh. What else am I wrong about? It's that powerful. So if you're able to physically, if it's something that you could entertain, I really encourage people to, just train for a 5K and prove to yourself through that physicality that you can do hard things and you can do things that you didn't think you could do, and that you can take on new identities with intention and action and focus and support. So that's what this podcast is about. It's about a reinvention, or really a reclamation of who you are, a remembering of who you are. Because I believe that you are capable of a huge amount more than you may currently be creating and experiencing in your life. All of us are. And that your life can really change. You can begin to create things that will make you so proud and begin to think, oh, right, that's who I am. I'm not this smaller version that just hasn't felt right, that's felt pretty crappy, actually. That isn't the truth of me. The truth of me is something a lot more powerful, and I've sensed it. I feel myself kind of getting emotional just saying this. I've sensed it, I've touched it, I've seen a glimmer of it on occasion, and I want to live there. I want to live there. That feels like a place I want to go. And often we just don't know how to get there. And I wrote Choose Yourself really as sort of this blueprint, really this pathway, because it's so noisy, isn't it? It's so distracting. I mean, New Year's resolutions, my phone, I'm just going to have to limit myself the amount of time I spend on that device because it's so addictive and draining. And the more time I spend on my phone, the worse I feel. I mean, the worse I feel. It's so distracting. Our attention is just hijacked and we get hooked. And then I feel crap. I feel crap about myself when I waste my time on that. And it doesn't get me where I want to go. It doesn't put me in a position where I'm really in touch with who I truly am, like the best of myself. It really just activates the parts of myself that serve me the least. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I suspect you don't want to do it either. So I would like to invite you to listen to this podcast and to come into a different space, a space that's about possibility and your potential and your power and touching into that, activating that, becoming your own ally, your own best friend, rather than always trying to recover from actions that lead to regret. And kind of, why did I do that again? Why haven't I? Why isn't it? We're more than we imagine. We're more than we imagine. We can become and be more. And it begins with choosing ourselves. One day at a time, one moment at a time, at those junctures for decisions. For me, it's, in some of its simplest form, it's the late night snacking when I'm not choosing myself, when I go at 11 o'clock at night and decide that I'll have an ice cream. I'm not. How do we interrupt patterns when we're not choosing ourselves? So I hope in this podcast there'll be moments and episodes when it's just me, like today, talking to you, and there'll be other times, many times, while I'll be inviting guests onto the podcast to talk about their own journeys through life and where they felt like they've been in betrayal, when they've not been choosing themselves, when they've just been on autopilot, pleasing other people, playing old scripts, behaving in ways that make other people comfortable, and in it denying their own truth, and moments of change, changing direction, getting on their own side. And what we all can learn from and feel inspired by these stories of other people, taking that, making that pivot and saying, okay, enough, there's more. And I think the more that we are in community with people who are bravely getting on their own side, who are choosing themselves, the more that can sort of permeate ourselves, and we can begin to make that a theme in our own lives. that we choose ourselves. And I really think that when we begin to do that, it's almost like, people, you're really tapping into your authenticity then. You're really beginning to know who you are, and it lights you up. When you're on purpose, when you're connected into your wholeness and the truth of who you are, when you're in pursuit of that, when that is your intention, man, you really light yourself up. And other people notice it. And you're inspiring people. You're inspiring other people. And that can only be a good thing. That can only be a good thing. So I'll just close with this. In the highly unlikely event that nobody has told you this yet today, let me be the one to have the honor of reminding you that you are truly magnificent. Magnificent. And the world is a far more beautiful place because you are here with us all. Be safe, be well. Until the next time. Bye. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me today. If you enjoy the episode and it resonated with you, please consider subscribing and share this podcast with someone you know who would benefit from the message. If you'd like to take things a step further, you'll find some free and paid resources in the show notes. And until next time, in the unlikely event that no one has told you this yet today, let me have the profound honor of reminding you that you are truly magnificent and the world is a far better and brighter place because you are here with us all. See you next time.